Good morning, it is Sam here coming to you live from where I'm at. And today we wanted to talk about the Texas primaries. So, a couple questions that we're going to get into in more depth over the next coming minutes here. What are we ranking? How and why we created the Texas primaries. And then we're just going to talk about the results. So, if you want to watch all that, then stay tuned. And if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam. And if you're a returning viewer, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you should better be pressing that like button. I mean, come on, this is your second time watching the video. You can press that like button, bro. Helps on the channel. Okay, so what are we ranking? Well, what we're ranking here is we took all the 10 candidates from the last debate. And we wanted to get a understanding of how people did. So we stacked ranked them 1 through 10, and that is what we're actually ranking here. Now, why did we create the Texas primaries? Well, at the end of this video, we're going to compare polling data with what we're doing, and I'll show you, so you can decide for yourself. I'm not saying somebody's right or wrong. I'm just thinking that there's maybe a better way to think about this kind of stuff going forward into the future. We want to understand what is actually happening at the heartbeat of California versus what, like, the polling data, right? Where you have polling data where it might be several hundred people or maybe a couple thousand people. California, or Texas, I'm sorry. Texas has like 30 million people. So if you have 2,000 people doing some poll, that's supposed to be representative of 30 million? It just doesn't make sense to me, right? And I understand this just is statistics behind it. I studied statistics for a number of years, but I think there's potentially a better way to approach this going forward. And why Texas, as I just touched on briefly. Let's take a look over here. We have Texas as the second largest state in the United States. Estimated population of just over 29 million. So just about 9% of the entire U.S. population lives in one state, right? 1/50th of the states, right, because it's 1 out of 50 states, has just about 9% of the total population. That's insane. By the way, interesting tidbit I feel like this should be for long-term investors. Check out the population density over here on the right of 111 versus California or Florida or New York or Pennsylvania. They have a long way to go to get to parity with these other states. The growth rate of Texas, I think, is going to continue for quite a long time, next couple decades. Because if you look at the population density, there's a lot of room to grow to even just get to the same levels as California. California's at a population density per squared mile or something of 255 versus 111. So there's a long way to go for them. Anyways. That's not what we're here to talk about, Sam. Well, how did we do this? Well, I think before we get into the very specifics of how we created this, I think it probably behooves us to touch on the tools that we're using. And what we're using here is Google and YouTube. And why are we using those? Well, because let me show you something. This is Wikipedia. This is a ranking of the top sites in the entire world, right? And if we come down here, we have Google right here is number 1, and YouTube is number 2. Now, Alexa.com is one of the sites I use for some of my analytical data and analysis. And SimilarWeb is they do similar things to Alexa. I just generally prefer to use Alexa. But one of the two sites that are number 1 and number 2 in the entire planet, Google and YouTube. The amount of attention that is needed to be number 1 and number 2 on the planet from a website standpoint is tremendous. And that is why we're using Google and YouTube. There's something like, I don't know, almost 4 million searches per minute just from Google. And there's like 5 billion, 5B with a billion, over 5 billion video views per day. Like, there's a fuckload of tension on both of these platforms. So what we did, given that there's so much attention versus, say, polling data where you might have several hundred or several thousand people responding to a poll, why don't we take each candidate's name and search for it so we can see who has the most search volume? How do we do that? Well, what happens is we use a site, Google Trends. Google Trends just tracks the search volume on Google and YouTube and a couple other things. So what we did is we put in every single candidate's name. As you can see here, hopefully, yeah, right here at the top, we put in all the candidates' names, right? And then we stack rank them. So what we have here is we have YouTube over the last 12 months, and Andrew Yang is 1, and Bernie Sanders is 1. So right here, where there's a tie, what I would do is I would come down here, and we'd go to Andrew Yang, and I would see if Andrew Yang beats whoever he's in a tie with, right? So 22 and 22, they're tied. So what I would do is come down here, and we look at Andrew Yang has 30%, and Bernie has 20%. So he beats in this one here. Let's see, Andrew Yang 27, 27, they tie there. He loses here, he loses here, he loses here. So he's lost 3 out of 5 here. So then I'll go over to Bernie Sanders and I'll see if he loses 3 out of 5 to Andrew Yang, because these are the counties, I believe it is, in Texas. Okay, so here we have Bernie Sanders winning. 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 So Bernie Sanders would rank higher than Andrew in this viewpoint. But then we would go over here, and we would go from the 12-month to the 90-day, and then from the 90-day we'd go to the 30-day. And we did this for all 10 candidates in all 3 time periods, and we stack rank them 1 through 10, who had the most search volume to who had the least amount of search volume, given each time period. And then we take an average of all 3 of those. So we didn't do an equally weighted average. What we did, and you can let me know your thoughts down below, but my rationale is that the older data is important, but not as important as the most recent data. So given that that is what I believe, the 12-month and the 3-month each represent 25% of our average, where the 30-day represents 50% of our average. Because the more recent the data, the more relevant it is to me. So that's why we put that in here. So we have 25% of the total average made up from the 12-month, 25% of the total average made up from the 3-month, and 50% is coming from the 30-day. And this is what we came up with. Okay, so number 1 is Joe Biden. Number 2 is Bernie Sanders. Number 3 is Andrew Yang. By the way, I just couldn't find a pink lettering number 3 for Yang. That's why he has a gold 3. Number 4 is Kamala Harris. Same thing with Elizabeth Warren. When I try to add the 5 in there in pink, there wasn't a 5 there. So that's why we have different colors here. But that rounds out the top 5. Some interesting notes that I wanted to touch on here. By the way, today is 9/27. This is when I did this analysis. So one of the things that I did notice going through this is that Julian, or Julian, I think his name is. Somebody corrected me the other day. By the way, thank you for correcting me and saying his name. But Julian, he actually is moving up. If you look at the Google search for Julian, he's generally in the top. He's generally 8th, maybe 9th on most of the data that we're looking at. By the way, I do this analysis on a national level too, so if you want to check that out, go back to the channel, but there's some interesting insights we can pull from that. So on this here, we see his 8th, he got all the way up to 6th in the 90-day, Julian did. So something he's doing appears to be working. And on the Google, this is the Google rankings here, right? And on the Google rankings, we have, he's ranked 7th. He's never beaten Cory Booker in all the times that I've been doing these. He's never beaten Cory Booker, and he beat Cory Booker. So either he is doing something very well, or Cory Booker is losing some ground. So that is kind of interesting to see on the Google side. To number 10 is Beto. I don't know what's going on with this person, but like maybe it's because of the apostrophe in their name. I'm not sure, but I don't know how they're staying in. I feel like we'll see what happens after the next debate here. I would love to hear your thoughts, but before we get into the wrap-up here, let's jump over to, let me show you what I did overall. So as I just mentioned, the breakdown, right? So I did a breakdown of the Google's search volume and then YouTube's, and we broke it down within each one of those categories. Then we took the average, right, as I just mentioned. And then to get the overall ranking, over here what we did is we just took an average of these two. So I took 50% of the Google and 50% of YouTube. They are the number 1 and 2 sites on the planet. So we took just an equally rated average to come up with the overall overall ranking right here. So the other interesting thing here is actually that Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren are essentially tied overall, but the Kamala Harris was leading in a couple areas, and that's why I put her down as 5th or 4th here, even though on the overall their score is the same. So technically you could say that the score they tied at 4th spot, and because when you look at the overall ranking, you could say that they're both 4, even if Kamala was ahead in certain areas. So with that, let's jump over to Real Clear Politics. So Real Clear Politics aggregates polling data on a statewide basis, but also on a national level. And this is what a lot of like pundits or people like in the media. By the way, if you know of anybody in the media who wants some interesting things to talk about like this, share this video with them or share my contact information with them so that I can do an interview with them and we can get the message out about what we're doing and that there's at least a potentially better way or a different way of approaching understanding what is happening and what the country is interested in and what the country is thinking about. So they have, and it's way less full of biases throughout it, biases. So they have, what we're looking at right here is the California primary, the Democratic primary. So come down here, and they have Biden as number 1, so we also had Biden as number 1. But there's some discrepancies in the placing. So they have Warren as number 2, where we have Warren tied at 4th, right? They have Sanders at 3rd, and I think we have him at 2nd. Yep. And number 3rd is Yang, and they have him at 5th. So we could think of the polling data as they're just completely inaccurate. It's kind of how I think of it, or more as like a lagging factor. So we can think of it as a inaccurate lagging factor relative to say like what's actually going on, like what people are actually searching for in Texas, right? They get on their computer and their phone and they're like, I'm going to search for Joe Biden, right? But you could, I almost would have guessed that Joe Biden would come up number 1 in Texas. I don't know, I just would get that sense that it would come up number 1. And lastly, I wanted to thank anybody who's here, but we're going to jump into answering some questions and some comments on YouTube. By the way, first of all, thank you so much for the awesome feedback and very thoughtful comments and insights that you guys leave in terms of the perspective you have on these videos. I really do appreciate it. It's very interesting. I take some of the very insightful comments that I notice while I'm at work, and I'll screenshot it and I'll put it up on my Instagram stories. So if you do that and I put it up on my Instagram stories, check my Instagram's link in the description. If you jump over there, I will also tag you in it. Jump over to Instagram, say what's good, and I'll also tag you in it. But if you want your question answered, first of all, it's probably better if it's a little bit longer because then I'm going to notice it when I'm scrolling through. Second of all, if you put the hashtag, like Anton did here, Stolt in the front of it, then we can go take a look at it, right? It makes it easier for me to notice it while I'm doing these videos. Because I do have to try to think at the same time as articulate while looking at what I'm doing. So this is from Anton. He's like Beto at number 10 while he was disappearing pretty fast. Yes, Anton, you're right, brother. By the way, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the comment. Second of all, I don't know of a tremendous amount of support that I'm seeing in all the factors that I'm looking at. that show Beto anything other than 10th. Let's take a look at Real Clear Politics, where Beto is. Rourke is like, what, 7th here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In California, supposedly he's 7th, and here he's 10th. So he's not doing good, really, according to them, but he's doing better, according to them, than he is our polling data. So if you also look at our power rankings, so what our power rankings do, that's our national level, and on the national level, we take a look at 7 factors. So not only do we look at Google search volume and YouTube search volume, we look at their website ranking in the U.S. to see which website ranks the highest in the U.S. Then we look at the total amount of time on the website and the total number of pages they look at. Then we jump over to their social media. So for the social media, we check out Facebook, we check out Twitter, we check out their YouTube channel. And on each one of these, we can compare the growth rates of the channels. Along with, say, views on YouTube, or number of tweets on Twitter, or likes on Facebook. And we compare these, and we do the same exact thing. We stack rank them, just like we've been doing. And then we take an average to come up with an overall ranking. So when I do that, and I go through, Beto's still ranked number 10. So it's, I don't think that it's just, this person's not relevant at all on Google and YouTube. I just don't think they're like super relevant, period. Like, no offense to whoever this person is, like, I just don't think they're super relevant, relatively speaking, to these other 10 candidates, right? Or 9 candidates. Anton, thank you. Awesome fucking question. Let's scroll down. Oh, look at this. Somebody fucking used the stole hashtag. We've got Corey Jones here. Thanks, brother. I'm assuming that's a dude, because one of my buddies is Corey, but it could be a girl as well. Either way. Corey Jones. Let's see here. I wonder if Yang supporters are just more active online, and by the way, I'll get to that in just a second, or if he has more actual supporters by the search numbers. We all only have one vote. If I Google him 20 times in one day or watch 20 videos, I'm not going to count as 20 votes. Polling is not accurate, but is this method just as inaccurate? Hope not. I like Yang. Hey, brother. Awesome thoughts and comments here. Let's also just read what Barry Lynch and Jacob, Best Car Pet Services. That's interesting. Best Car Pet Carpet Services. Let's read their comments real quick. How many videos do people make of the rest of the candidates? It's mostly Yang. He's going so awesome point, Barry. Awesome point there. I do see that the data could be skewed, as Corey mentions, but I do also see that what Barry's saying is accurate. And let's just touch on Jacobs before I give my thoughts. Google is actually smart enough to know not to count the same person twice. Think Google Ads. Well, I don't know if I don't think that. Yes, Google could do that, but with the data that we're looking at, Jacob, they don't. There's no way for me to tell if it's the same person or not. Unfortunately, at least when I'm looking at this, I haven't figured out a way to do that yet. But according to for what Corey says is yes, that's accurate. But I'm going to touch on that first line, right? I wonder if Yang supporters are just more active. I'm like, yes, I agree that they probably are, but some interesting data to support this, right? So according to Pew Research, the 2020 election, the group of the population that's 53 years old and younger, so that's Generation X, Millennials, Generation Y, and Z, right? I think it's those 4 generations. That population group, which is 53 and younger, at 54 and over, that's baby boomers and some other generation. But those generations are going to represent about 65% of the entire voting population. What does that mean? Or what are some of the common characteristics of people that are 53 and younger versus maybe what would be a contrast to 54 and older? Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me, and you guys can let me know, like, Sam, you're way fucking off base, but like, people 53 and younger tend to use the internet more. Right? So it would probably be more skewed to online. So I would agree with that point. But I also agree that that's impactful, where in the past that may not have been impactful, right? So figure 4 or 8 years ago, the data online could be telling one story, where data from polling could be telling a different story, because that is capturing baby boomers and the older generation above baby boomers. But today, the 53 and younger is going to represent 65% of the vote. Where do the 53 and younger hang out? On fucking line. So to me, it's more accurate. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Now, touching on the last part here, more supporters in search. Okay, so one of the things, have you guys ever heard of Wish, the shopping app? Or there's another company called Gymshark. I'm big into fitness. By the way, I do some fitness videos too if you want to check those out. But either one of those apps, like Wish, it depends on, it's a private company, so it depends on like where you can find the information, but I believe they're doing over somewhere like $100 million in sales. And how they do that is through online advertising. And what do they do? And they just advertise on like Facebook and Google and Instagram and whatnot. And why do they do that? Because there's such a fucking gigantic swath of fucking attention there. It's absolutely insane. There's so much attention on like the top 10 sites. Most of them are social, but it doesn't matter if they're social or not. That's where people are paying attention to. So think about this example. If you have like a fucking cart that you sell like hot dogs and shit out of, right? Like one of those, like you flip the stuff and you sell it right out of the cart, or you're standing next to it that you see in New York City and stuff. You're doing one of those. Do you want to go in the back of Target by the trash can? Right, in the dumpsters to sell hot dogs? Or would you prefer to be right in front, right by the door where everybody can smell and see your cart and what you're doing? You want to be where the attention is, right? Like that example is like, yeah, no shit, Sam. Like that's just a retarded example. That's the same exact thing that happens online. People are going to these town hall meetings where you can get, 60, 160, 200 people showing up, and they're not filming that and putting that fucking shit online, because that's where people are. Is online. Remember, 65% of the voting population is online. So I think it's a huge missed opportunity for so many of these candidates. Like I feel like Yang's supporters are helping him out tremendously compared to a lot of these other candidates. So because when he goes to a town hall, there's clips you're going to see online about it where, and I'm not like really following what the context, meaning the words that are coming out of these people's mouths. I do have a little bit of context for Yang, but I'm not really like diving in deep. Like I like the numbers. I want to understand what America thinks. I want to understand what you think of what's happening, because I think what you guys think, what everybody in America thinks, or on a state level, is way more interesting to me than understanding what these people think. Right? Because I want to know how America thinks of these people to understand the essence of what's happening in America. What is the collective thinking about in America? Because if the collective is thinking about one specific candidate, maybe say in this example, like they're thinking about Andrew Yang, then it shows like what's happening in America to me. So to me, that's why I don't really follow the context of these. And the last bit here, so this is a good point. It's 100% valid. If I Google him 20 times in a day and watch 20 videos, he's like, I'm not going to get 20 votes. Yes, but go back to the beginning example where Wish, right? They're a $100 million company, and they don't do anything in the back of fucking Target to try to get votes, or I'm sorry, sales. So the same thing happens when you have, there was The Economist came out with polling data. And I think the N, which is the sample size in statistics, so if you look at the nomenclature is going to say N and then a number. If you're looking up the sample size of a polling, like some polling data, it will say N and then a number, and that's the sample size. That's the number of people that actually kind of did the survey or whatever. And The Economist, I think it was YouGov.com with The Economist, they had a poll, and there was 600 people. So to me personally, and I'm not saying this is right for everybody, just for me though, right, Corey? So the way we're doing things now, to me, is extremely biased in many different ways, whether that's the opt-in, whether it's the polling method, whether it's the way the questions are asked, right? Like, I want the most objective, cleanest data I can find. Boom. So to me, I have a very, very small sample size, and that's supposed to be representative, and it's not supposed to be biased, versus what's going on with Google, where somebody could Google somebody 20 or 50 or 100 times. But I think that the scale of this kind of weights out some of those, like, real life fucked up shit happens, right? Yes, right? Somebody could search for somebody 20 times, and that could potentially skew the data. But we have millions and millions and millions of searches. So 20 times, awesome, like, that's cool and everything. It does skew the data, but I mean, it's one out of millions and millions and millions of searches. The number of searches on Google per minute is over 3.8 million. 5.6 billion per day. 5.6 billion searches per day. So to have, you know, a couple 10,000 people searching, I mean, yes, it can, but so can polling only 600 people. I would rather use this method personally. You guys can let me know your thoughts down below. By the way, on the way down there, this was a long ending to the video, so on the way down there, make sure you press that subscribe button, that bell notification. Stay tuned for tomorrow morning. I've got lots more good stuff coming. I'm going to be doing the new round of the power ranking coming up, so press that bell notification so YouTube can notify you every time I post a new video. If you want to help the channel out, if you enjoy any of this type of stuff I'm talking about, take this and share this with somebody who you think can get a value out of it, whether it's just helping, like, with the perspective, like, there's a different way of doing things in 2019. We don't have to rely necessarily on the legacy way of doing things when there's a potentially better way of doing things and gathering more clean data to understand what is happening around us. So if you appreciate that, then share that with somebody who will help, who they think they can get value. That way, hopefully they can get some value out of it, and it does help the channel out tremendously. If you're like, this is a cool video, but you're fucking still a douche, I don't want to share your video, press that thumbs up button. That also helps out with the YouTube algorithm and puts this video in front of more people so that we can get this message out there. And if you don't want to do anything, just tell somebody. Like, don't have to share any of my shit, don't have to press the like button. Like, just tell somebody that there's a different way of doing things that is potentially significantly better and more accurate to understand what's happening around the world. Just tell them that, and they can figure out themselves. But it's just, I mean, this is 2019. Look at the caucus video on, like, the Iowa caucus video. The way that we do a caucus in Iowa, that's actually how we elect our president. Like, people go into a room and fucking talk. And they're like, oh, you should fucking support this person. You should support this person. And there's specific timelines. Like 30 minutes. Like, this is retarded shit. And that's how we elect our president. It's completely insane. Like, go watch that video. Back on the channel, I think it was 2 days ago or something. Anyways, getting off topic. If you want to jump over to Instagram, say, what's good? I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, again, leave them down below. Peace the fuck out. I'll see you tomorrow.